If you're in the market for a new driver, chances are you will have your eyes on one of the 4 drivers I've got in my hands here. I've got the Titleist 917, the Callaway Great Big Bertha Epic, the TaylorMade M1 and the Ping G400. But knowing what to invest in and knowing where to spend your money is a tricky decision. And so what we wanted to do was produce a head-to-head video looking at all 4 of these drivers and pitting them against each other in 6 different categories. So we looked at looks, feel, forgiveness, power, accuracy and value, and we wanted to essentially pick our favourite in each of those categories, hopefully to give you some advice and some guidance on which brand you might want to go out there and test for yourself. Now there's obviously one big caveat. This is obviously just my opinion, what I like the look of, the sound of, what works for me might not quite work well for you. Make sure that you test a broad range of what's on the market and make sure that whatever you decide to go for in the end, you get custom fitted for, because that really can unlock extra performance. Just a quick word on how we conducted the test. So we used the GC2, the Foresight Sports GC2 quad launch monitor to get all of the data. Each of the drivers was set up to 9.5 degrees. Each of the drivers had a extra stiff or a Torque stiff shaft in them. I used the low spin version of the Ping and the low spin, the Sub-Zero version of the Callaway driver as well. We also used premium golf balls for the same premium golf ball for each of the driver tests that we did. So hopefully by normalising each of those, we're able to provide some test results that really do stack up. Having said all that, let's take a look at each of the drivers in each of the different categories. So let's start with looks. And what I've got in my hands here are both ends of the spectrum. You have the very simple to look down on, very classic looking Titleist 917, and the more techie, more exciting looking driver, the TaylorMade M1. For me, I think this lacks the shelf appeal that the TaylorMade has. Certainly the Ping G400 and the Callaway Epic sit somewhere in between. So they still have a classic look to them, but they have a little bit more sizzle, a little bit more shelf appeal to them. If I was picking one of these drivers, I think I'd go with the TaylorMade M1. It still somehow, it pulls off this sort of modern, classic look. It looks really techie, it looks really modern, it suggests that there's a lot of technology in there that's going to help you, and it also looks very forgiving. In a club head, that still somehow looks fairly classic, fairly simple to look down on. I think TaylorMade have done a really good job with the looks of the TaylorMade M1. Okay, so in terms of forgiveness, and what's worth saying right at the start of this is by forgiveness, what we mean here is how does the performance stack up on off-centre strikes? It's something that each of the brands has made big strides on in recent times. Does it still offer you good distance when you don't strike it from the middle? And the reason I'm holding all 4 drivers is that the performance is comparable. Picking one over another in this category would be splitting hairs because each of the drivers performs fantastically well on off-centre strikes. One thing I would say is that the Callaway driver is certainly more compact to look down on, and that might not, it certainly didn't in me, inspire a great deal of confidence, especially in comparison to something like the M1 that is quite large to look down on. So your decision in the category of forgiveness might be based on how forgiving the driver is to look down on. In terms of performance, all 4 drivers are comparable. So in terms of distance, there really was a clear winner. It was the Callaway Great Big Bertha Epic Sub-Zero. I was managing somehow to hit this 296 through the air. I hit a couple with it that went over the 320-yard mark, which is absolutely fantastic distance. You'll notice also when you look at the stats, it was launching high, it was spinning really low. The power on offer in this driver is absolutely fantastic. Again, it comes with a slight caveat in terms of I'd want to test it out on the golf course. Whether or not I feel quite as confident swinging at it in the same way on the golf course as I did testing it with the GC2 quad launch monitor on the range, I'm not 100% sure about. But what is for sure is that this is a very, very powerful driver indeed and performed really well in terms of distance. Now, when it comes to accuracy, the driver I'd pick would be the Titleist 917 D2. Now, there's another important caveat about this. I was fitted for this at the Titleist headquarters out in Carlsbad, went through a really thorough fitting, and actually this driver is set up with the weight cartridge in a sort of fade bias position. This helps me swing at the club a bit harder without fear of hitting a snap hook straight left. And actually I think that's really important. Neither the Ping G400 or the Callaway Big Bertha Sub-Zero have that movable weight ability in the back of the head. So if you do want to set your driver up to guard against a particular bad shot, the Titleist or the TaylorMade might just be the way to go. You can move the weights around in the head just to help you do exactly that. I didn't do that in the TaylorMade driver. I left it in the neutral, low spinning version, in the low spin setting on that head. But the Titleist driver was set up and was fitted for me, and this is the one that I would use if I absolutely had to hit a fairway. Okay, so moving into the feel category, it's a really interesting one, and I think if we'd have been doing this test 3 or 4 years ago, Ping probably would have been at the bottom of the pack on this one. For me anyway, because I've never really liked that higher pitch sound through impact, but with the Ping G400 driver, it sounds so much better. They've worked on a new forged face and internal weighting structure that has given it a much more powerful, much better sound through impact. If I was picking, it would be one of these two drivers, either the Callaway or the Titleist. Now the Titleist does have quite a hard sound through impact. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, I don't think. For me, I've always grown up with Titleist drivers. I love the sound of this driver. If I was picking between the two, I think the Callaway would slightly edge it. It is such a powerful, such a solid feel through impact, and it's hard to argue when you see that overall distance number, when you see the power on offer that you get from that. It feels absolutely superb. So the value category is another really interesting one. What we're going to refer to here is the recommended retail prices. These are the prices that the manufacturers recommend that their product is sold at. The reality about what you find these products for at the market is quite different. So if you do a bit of shopping around, you might be able to find each of these drivers for a little bit less. But the TaylorMade driver comes in at around about $479, Callaway $469, Titleist $450, and the Ping is down at $389. Now obviously the Ping doesn't have the same level of adjustability, as it's more of a sort of M2 in terms of the amount of adjustability that you get in the head. But having tested this out, having spent a lot of time with it on the GC2 launch monitor, I'd say the overall performance means that this at $389, whilst it's still a lot of money, is really strong value for money. So which driver came out on top for me? Well, if I was going purely by the numbers, I think it would have to be the Callaway Epic Sub-Zero. The numbers were phenomenal, especially the distance. It does come out like a bit of a rocket. It sounds fantastic, and the performance using it on the GC2 yesterday was absolutely fantastic. However, for me, the more important factor is accuracy. Am I really going to save myself any shots by hitting it 5 or 10 yards further down the fairway? Probably not, but if I can hit a few more fairways in every round, I probably am going to save myself a few shots. That's why I'd probably go with the Titleist driver. Again, that ability to move the weights around in the head and have this set at a fade bias enables me to be a bit more accurate with this driver, which is what I'd go for. Obviously price is a big factor. The Ping driver offers a fantastic amount of playability at a fantastic price. And the other thing worth saying is that if you're somebody that is changing your technique, getting better, improving, going through a course of lessons, then the TaylorMade M1 driver might well be the driver that gives you more longevity. You might get more years out of it because you're able to move the adjustability around in the head to change alongside to suit your changing golf swing. So there is an awful lot to think about. I've been through this test, I've done it properly, did it the right way, and yet it's still a tricky decision as to which driver to go for. If it was my decision, it would be the Titleist 917, but ultimately, the only thing I would say to you is you've got to get out there, test a few different models, make sure you go through the process with a pro, get fitted, get the driver in exactly the right spec for you, and if you go through that process, one thing is for sure, you will walk away with a driver that will help you play better golf.